Hi everyone, it's Andrea over at Sewspire.com, and today I am here to show you how to sew a basic messenger bag. I have compiled a playlist for you that has instructions on how to prepare the body panels and the pockets, and then this video in which we will assemble the exterior, the interior, craft the strap, the flap, and the key fob. So this particular tutorial is really geared for beginners, and it is designed to teach you how to make a basic slip pocket, how to work with the Sewspire T method, and how to piece material together to get a unique look like I have done with the flap on this bag. So this is how the bag comes together. You can see it is a big bag. It can be worn over the shoulder or crossbody. We have an adjustable strap here that I will show you how to craft using 2 tri-glides. You also have the option of using 1 tri-glide and 1 O-ring. This bag has a press lock closure on the flap, but I give you some more options for the closure as well. There are 2 front pockets, 2 side pockets, and then along the back there are 3 pockets, and then on the inside there are 3 pockets. I use a combination of batting and interfacing to give this bag a sturdy and durable weight. It does stand on its own and it is lightly padded. So I think it's perfect for use as a work bag or as a family bag for extended outings or travel. So like all my recent videos, there is a 1-page PDF which you can purchase for a nominal fee that will provide you with all the pattern measurements, the supply list, the approximate finished measurements, inspiration photos, and then a link to the playlist for this project. And that's useful because if you save it on your computer for inspiration at a later date, when you reference this 1-page document, you can click right on that hyperlink and be taken to the step-by-step video tutorials that will show you exactly how I made this beautiful messenger bag. Now, the great thing about this bag is it is definitely unisex in regards to the boxy styling. So if you were to craft this from a solid fabric, a waxed canvas, anything more durable, even a faux leather or even real leather if you're equipped to work with that, it would make a wonderful bag for the masculine humans in your life as well. So please do keep that in mind. This is the last video in our messenger bag series. We didn't go as deep as I wanted to because I had jury duty for a week, so we missed a big chunk of time. So my apologies for that, but I hope you will still find value in this segment. So without further ado, shall we get started? Okay, so in the first segment, we prepped all of the pockets for this basic messenger bag. We're going to begin today by attaching those pockets to the body panels, which we have already cut out. I have selected to back my exterior body panels with a heavy sew-in Pellon interfacing. You may know it as Pellon 70, I believe, but it's going to give this bag a lot of body. So I have my exterior front panel here, and I positioned the pocket on top of that panel, and I have bumped that up 2 inches from the base. I'm going to run a row of stitching right across the base here, and then this pocket is going to get divided right at center, so I have 2 wide pockets. Okay, so I've stitched across the base of that pocket and then down the center to divide that in half. I have my rear body panel already prepped, and that had the same size pocket, but I divided that in thirds and then came across the lower third of the center pocket to create a shallow slip pocket here at center that will hold the cell phone. Then I have my two side panels, which also have side pockets on those, and those are positioned 2 inches up from the base, and all I need to do for those is stitch right across the base to attach the pockets to those side exterior panels. And then I have my base panel here. So we're going to use the modified T method to assemble the exterior of this project. So we will begin with the front body panel, and we will position those side panels with the pockets right sides facing on that front body panel. And all of the pocket tops are towards the top of your exterior. And when I have side pockets on a project, I like to try to align the tops of those pockets. And that's what I give the priority to, even if it means that the top of my body panels will be a little shorter. And if you just fold back those side panels, you can tell if the tops are aligned, and I'm happy with that. So using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to attach these side panels to this front exterior body panel. Okay, and that worked out well, and because I used 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I can be confident that I have captured all of those pocket layers in that seam. I do want to go ahead and trim this up to 1/4 inch now that I know all those pockets are secure. And for this particular project, if you're going to be using a heavier interfacing like I am, it will be important to reduce the bulk at those seams, because we will be folding this top edge over and doubling this thickness. All right, so now I've created a tri-folding panel. Now I want to bring over my rear exterior panel, and I want to position my base panel on that rear panel at the bottom, aligning those long edges. I'm going to stitch right across the base using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then that creates a bi-folding panel, which I will also want to trim up to 1/4 inch. Okay, now I will open up the tri-folding panel. My pocket tops are here closer to my body, and I'm going to position the bi-folding panel on top of that with the base at center of the base of that front tri-folding panel. So I'm aligning the two bases, and I'm making sure that this top panel here is centered on that, so I can feel where those seams connect at the sides. And I am going to stitch right across the base of this seam to seam. So I'm stopping 5/8 of an inch from each end. And then this looks like a very large T, and that is why I call it the T method. So before I move on, what I do need to do is angle in just a bit here and trim up the bulk of that last seam to 1/4 inch. And then the next step in this process is to raise up that front panel and align the base of that side panel with the side of the base panel. And so that is easier to do if you just work one side at a time and keep that nice and straight, and you're going to stitch seam to seam across that side. And then you'll repeat that on the opposite side, and you can just back that in and start right at that seam. And now your stage is set, and the next step is to raise up that remaining rear wall and stitch the side seam. Before you stitch the side seam in place, you're going to want to take care there and align the tops of your pockets. That will be the priority. So once you get the pockets aligned, regardless if the top and the base aligns, then you can secure those panels and stitch from the top to the bottom seam using 5/8 of an inch. And then you'll repeat that for the remaining side, making the pockets the first priority, aligning those top edges, and then putting a pin or clip in place to hold that. And then you can align the remainder of that side and stitch from the base or the top, whatever is more natural, using 5/8 of an inch. And then just peek inside really quick and make sure that the pockets are aligned and nothing shift. And then you can go ahead and trim up those last two seams to 1/4 inch. And we'll want to then come across the base and trim each side up to 1/4 inch. And now you can see I have a very stable standalone exterior. This is a generous sized bag. So I want to go ahead and turn this exterior right side out. As I turn that, I'm going to remove the pins that were holding the pockets in place. And ideally, your pockets will be aligned at the base and at the top. A lot of that depends upon when you pressed over the top and the bottom of your pocket. If you struggle with getting everything aligned, an easy solution is to make that side pocket an inch taller. And so then it's not so obvious if all of those pocket panels don't align. Okay, so once you get the exterior turned right side out, go ahead and clean up any stray threads at this point. Do one more quality assurance check on the seams. Give the pockets a little tiny tug. That's a stress point there. Make sure that everything is functioning properly and as you hoped. And this looks great. So now I want to take that top edge and I want to turn that over about an inch and either pin or clip. Normally I would use clips, but with the messenger bags we have to insert that flap along the back wall, and that is not possible with clips. So I'm going to start out using these really long pins, and I like to pin the sides down first and then come across the front and the back so that I can use the sides to guide that fabric and ensure I get a nice even spans across the front and the back. With the sides being a shorter distance, it's easier to eyeball those and know that they're level. And then because that fabric is already turned over, it will help you keep the front and the rear of the bag level. You always can measure, of course, and determine if the bag is the same height on the right as on the left if you are uncertain. So now you have a better idea of the finished size of this bag. And again, it's going to be perfect for everyday use, but large enough that you can potentially travel with this or even use it as a family bag. So my exterior is prepared. I'm going to go ahead and set that aside for a few minutes, and I want to bring over the interior. We're using the same measurements that I have indicated on the design board that accompanies this video series, and I have selected to back the interior panels with a natural quilt batting, so it doesn't have a lot of loft to it, but it adds a little bit of padding and some stability and softness to the interior, which is a quilt weight cotton material. I have used the same T method to get the project to this point. I attach those pockets 2 inches from the base of the front interior. Then I divided those in thirds, and I ran a horizontal stitch along the bottom third of that center pocket so that it was ideal for holding the cell phone as well. So I have my side panels attached to the front interior, and I have the base panel attached to the rear interior, and then I took that bifolding panel and attached it to the trifolding panel along the base. And so at this point, I'm ready to join the base of the sides and then the sides of the interior. And so that's what I'm going to do next, using the same 5/8 of an inch seam allowance that I used on the exterior. And now my interior is complete. You can see the quilt batting does not offer that as much body, but what I am interested in is that it offers it a little bit of padding, and then of course it's just going to make it more durable because it's another layer of material. I do want to go back in and trim up at minimum these side seams so I can reduce that bulk, as we're going to turn this edge over 1 inch. So now that I have my interior trimmed up, I can take that and fold that edge over at the sides first, and then I can hand press that. And the nice thing about working with the batting is it clings, so that will generally hold in place for you, and then just tug at the sides and make sure everything is even. And then you can bring back over your exterior and fit that interior inside of there. I like to put my interior pockets against what will be the exterior of the bag. So in this case, the exterior is going to be the side that has the 3 pockets. So I will fit the interior in so that it goes across those 3 pockets. And then I begin by lining up those side seams first, and I can use those pins that I have in the exterior to capture the lining. And if these side seams do not align, you know that your lining is not going to fit properly, and you should do some more investigation into why those don't align. It's most likely that your seam allowance was not consistent, but there is also the possibility that you did not cut your body panels uniformly. So always measure twice and cut once. So I have an absolutely perfect fit, which tells me I cut properly and I stitched with a nice even seam allowance. Now the combination of the quilt batting and the Pellon gives me a really nice weight and a little bit of padding and plenty of durability for this bag. So I like to reach inside and smooth out that lining, and again that batting is going to grip or cling to that interfacing on the exterior, so it's worth it to take a little time to smooth that out so it can grip and hold in place. And here's what I have so far. I like the lighter fabric on the interior. It's going to make it easy to find my contents with this. Now the next step for us is going to be to craft the strap. So I have a very long strap. For the messenger bags, I prefer to go longer on the straps and make extra long strap so that it can be worn over the shoulder or crossbody. I have used a 4-ply strap making method here, in which I have pressed that entire long strap down the center long ways, and then I have inserted a 3-inch channel of quilt batting that spans just shy of an inch in length. You want to minimize the bulk at the ends because we're going to be folding the fabric over to attach hardware. And then what I do is bring those outer edges inward to meet on that center press line, and I fold that over again and press well. For this strap, I'm going to stitch down that open edge first, then the folded edge, and then I'm going to run a row of stitching right down the center. Okay, I have stitched down the center, and that's given me a really nice ribbed strap. Sometimes with these longer straps, it is nice to give that a good press, especially if it starts to twist. I really wanted these stripes to be horizontal on this strap, so that meant that I had to cut the fabric along the selvage there, so that makes it more prone to twisting. But if I give this a good press, it should be just fine. Okay, so I've pressed my strap and I'm happy with that. The next step is to attach one of my 2 tri-glides to the end of the strap around that center bar. Now, if you're working from the supply list that comes with this project, you also have the option to work with 1 O-ring and 1 tri-glide for this project. The tri-glide's purpose is to make the strap adjustable. The O-ring, or the second tri-glide's purpose, is to attach the connector tab to the opposite side of the bag. So in my case, I wanted to work with this gunmetal hardware, and I did not have any O-rings, so I'm going to work with 2 tri-glides. But again, you have the option of working with 1 tri-glide and 1 O-ring, or 2 tri-glides. So the first step is to trim up one edge and then thread your tri-glide on that so that the material is covering that center bar. And you're going to take your end and fold that over a 1/2 inch and then bring it around to the strap side there so that that material is just floating on that center bar, and you will stitch right across that at the fold to secure the tri-glide to one end of the strap. Then go ahead and trim up the raw edges of the opposite end, and then cut off a 4-inch piece from that strap, which you will then thread along the bottom edge of your tri-glide if you're working with a tri-glide, or through your O-ring. And you're going to go ahead and run a row of stitching across the base of that. And this will be inserted on one side of the bag, and then the raw edge of the strap will be on the opposite side. So now working with the strap again, you're going to thread this attachment here onto the strap and bring that down to center. So this is either going to be a tri-glide or an O-ring. If it's a tri-glide, you should be able to see your center bar. Then go ahead and double your strap over so you have your raw edge, and you can bring that up through the base of the strap, over the center bar, and out the remaining side. And that's what creates the adjustable strap, because you can slide that tri-glide down the strap and make it longer or shorter. And then at this end, you either have your O-ring or your tri-glide and your opposite little tab, so that you can feed 2 raw edges into each side of the bag. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So we'll fit 1 raw edge on one side at center. I'm tucking that down in there at least 1 inch, because I'll want to run 2 rows of stitching across those ends. And then the opposite end of the strap will go on the opposite side at center, at least 2 inches down. So you can see why it is important to cut your strap much longer than what you think you will need to wear it crossbody. And now the strap is in place, and the next step is for us to craft the flap for this pretty bag. So I have here my flap lining panel, and then 3 pieces of material which are going to comprise the exterior of the flap. And so I'm going to feature the black canvas in the center, and then I want to position the accent panels right sides facing on top of the canvas, and using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to join those panels on the right and the left hand side so that I have a 3-part exterior panel. And then once I have that panel crafted, I'm going to go ahead and press this well. All right, and now I have my exterior flap pressed, and I have backed that with a like-size piece of quilt batting, and I have my lining here, which is the exact same size, and I want to take that lining and position it right sides facing on that flap, and then I'm going to slightly angle this flap just to give it some interest at the base. And so using my cutting mat and my blade, I'm just going to take off a 1.5 inch corner from the base there. And once you get one of those done, then you should use that as your template for the opposite side. So I'm measuring in 1.5 inches and up 1.5 inches to get that little triangle, which I then cut out of the bottom of that. And so now I'm going to stitch down the right hand side, across that angle, across the base of the flap, the angle, and up the left hand side. I'm going to use 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. When I get to that angle, I'm going to put the needle in the down position and pivot. Same thing at the base of that angle. And then before I trim, I like to line up those corners and make sure that they are very similar, and these are. Then I can go ahead and trim this to 1/4 inch. I'm going to then turn it right side out and give it another good press. Okay, so I have a nicely finished flap closure here, fully lined and freshly pressed. Now I want to top stitch around all of the finished edges using 1/4 inch. Alright, I have top stitched around all the finished edges. Now it's time for me to make a decision on the closure that I would like on this bag. I suggest, if you're going to use traditional snaps, which you might set with a hammer or with a cam press, that you position one snap in each corner of the flap and then one snap after you fit the flap on the exterior pockets. You could also use a heavy-duty magnetic snap at center. I have selected the press lock for mine because I like the additional security that this offers me. I know I'm not going to accidentally unsnap the flap on this bag. So the press locks are really easy to install after the bag is constructed, because you can install the press portion on the flap by just cutting 2 little holes in the material, and then there are prongs along the back of that allow you to press that in place. And then likewise, there's a plate on the back of the locking portion with really sharp prongs that will allow you to penetrate multiple layers of fabric on the exterior. So if you have made it this far in the project and you're wondering what type of closure would be simplest, it is in fact this press lock. So I'm going to show you how to install that. You will remove the brad from that press portion, and then you're going to open up that just a little bit. Be careful, you don't want to damage that. Then find center on your flap at the base and go ahead and slide that press lock on there at center. And then you can mark where it is that you will need to make little slits in the fabric. And that's why we use 1/4 inch seam allowance, so that we can make our slits above that top stitching. So I'm just going to use my seam ripper and very carefully cut a slit through all of those layers that is large enough to fit the prongs of the brad in. So then now that I have the slits cut in the fabric, I can fit this press portion back on the flap. Once I have it in place, I'll then compress that so it grips that fabric, and then I will thread the brad through both ends. Okay, and once you have the prongs through the back side, go ahead and press those inwards. And that's all that's involved in attaching the press portion to the flap. Now we need to bring over the exterior so we can fit the flap and make sure that we attach the lock portion at the right place. So for this bag, the front of the bag where the flap will overlap is going to be where the pockets are divided in half. So I'm going to center that flap on the bag and then go ahead and turn that over to the back side and fit the rear of that flap in between the interior and the exterior lining. And I'm just going to be tucking about 2 inches of that flap in between because I want to be able to enjoy that third accent print, as well as allow myself some depth to overload the bag. So I want to keep those side seams aligned, the top, interior, and exterior lining aligned, and the flap straight. So I will first just secure the flap at each corner, and this is why I opted to use these long pins instead of clips. So once I have the right and the left hand side secured, then I can come in and secure that flap at center so nothing shifts. And when you're securing that at center, make sure that those top layers of the lining are even, because you won't be able to see the lining when you're top stitching across there. So now is the time to make sure that everything is level. And so you just have to feel that. And you should be able to, when the flap's open, see that your lining is sitting level. And so your flap should span, when it's open, the rear of the bag in length. And then when you close that up and come around to the front, you should get a lot of coverage across the front too. Now that's with very little depth across the top here. You may, depending upon what content you're going to carry, want to afford yourself some depth across the top of this bag. And so that's going to impact where you place this press lock. So for me, I'm going to move that flap up until I can no longer see that third accent print at the top, and that's where I'm going to position my press lock, the lock portion of my press lock. So the next step for me is to move up the prongs, which they are very sharp. So just use a tool to open that up so that you don't accidentally pierce your skin. And then you need to be able to get the backing plate off of that locking mechanism. And that's what you should have. So the shorter side of the lock, this bar here, where the distance is shorter, becomes the top of this piece of hardware, so that when you slip the lock in there, it locks and the press portion comes down towards this longer portion. So just keep that straight, and then make sure your flap is positioned nice and straight. And my gauge is the fact that I cannot see that third accent. And then I'm looking here and everything's nice and straight. I have the shorter end of the press up, and then I'm going to reach inside and pierce the exterior layers of this fabric. And then reaching in on the inside, I'm going to fit that plate on top of there and press those prongs inward to secure that locking plate in between my interior and my exterior. And that was positioned right at center on that pocket divider. And now I'm just going to test fit. And that fits well. Such a pretty bag. Has a lot of interesting details about it. So under the flap here, I have my 2 deep pockets. I have my 2 side pockets. And then along the rear, I have 3 pockets. And then inside, I have 3 more pockets. So the next step is to craft the key fob that's going to go with this bag. And I have a little 1/2-inch swivel fob on a long skinny strip of material, which I have pressed in the same way that I prepared the strap, long ways, and then I brought the outer edges inward to meet on that center press line. Depending upon the width of your hardware, you may have to adjust the width of your strap, and you can do that without cutting by just overlapping that material. There's no interfacing on this, so the layers are not a problem until you get an ideal width that fits on your hardware nice. So I have my strap prepared. I'm going to run a row of stitching down the open edge and then the folded edge. And then I'm going to thread my swivel fob onto that strap. Line up those raw edges. You have the option of installing a rivet if you like through all of those layers. It adds a nice little touch. I don't have any of the gunmetal rivets, so I'm going to skip that step. I'm going to align those raw edges, trim that up, run a row of stitching across there just to hold that. And then I'm going to tuck the raw edge of this key fob in between the interior and the exterior lining at front so that those keys can slide in that exterior front pocket so that they're easy for me to find. And I'm going to put a pin through all of those layers so that doesn't shift. And now the bag is completely assembled. The last step is to put this up on the machine deck and stitch all the way around the perimeter of the bag using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I like to start on the side panel and then traverse the flap first, and then the opposite side panel, and then the front. I will come back in and I will add a second row of stitching on each strap below that first top stitching so that I can reinforce those straps well. Another option is for you to add rivets at the straps and reinforce those with rivets. Okay, I've made it all the way around the perimeter. I didn't have any problems at all sewing on the Juki TL2000Q. I made it through those corners where we had folded over multiple layers, and I was able to go back in and reinforce the straps with the second row of stitching. Love the stability that we achieved with the Pellon 70 and the quilt batting and the canvas for the exterior body. Have my key fob nice and accessible there. It can be worn on the inside or the outside. I can still see some of that third accent on the flap there. I have an extra long adjustable strap, which is great. And then the bag closes nice and securely with that press lock so that I don't have to worry about that accidentally coming unsnapped. It's a great size for everyday use or travel. And I have the side exterior pockets here, which I can comfortably fit a hand in. So those would be great for things that I need to keep accessible on the exterior of the bag. The contents that I put in the rear exterior of the bag will also be accessible, but a little more secure because that part of the bag will be across the body. And then the contents that are in the front exterior pockets are much more secure because of the flap. And then obviously anything on the spacious interior cargo area will be secure also because of the flap. So before we say goodbye, I want to give you the actual finished measurements of this piece. Across the base, it is 14.5 inches. Same is true at the top. Height-wise, this bag is 12.25 inches, and then depth is 5 inches. And then this adjustable strap can be worn crossbody or over the shoulder with ease. All right, well that turned out great. Thank you all so much for sewing with me. I'm thrilled with the bag. I'm going to keep this one for myself because I love this fabric. I will be looking forward to seeing your basic messenger bags on the Sewspire Facebook group page. If you prefer Instagram, just tag me at Sewspire and I will see your Sewspire makes that way as well. You can also use hashtag Sewspire. So I'll be back next week to kick off our holiday gift series. Now, I'm not going to keep any schedule and I'm going to be publishing lots of content for the month of December. So the best way for you to keep up with that will be to subscribe to the channel because then you'll receive notification in your YouTube home feed. If that is not an option for you, please do check back often in December because as fast as I'm sewing, there's going to be another video, all right? So until the next video, please know the creative genius in me will be celebrating the creative genius in you. I'll see you guys real soon. Thank you so much for sewing with me.